Rocco's joy turns to family turmoil as Britt's return shakes Port Charles. The residents of Port Charles are still reeling from one of the most shocking returns in recent General Hospital history. Dr. Britt Westburn's miraculous survival and homecoming has sent ripple effects throughout the community. But perhaps no one has been more profoundly affected than young Rocco Falconeri. What began as overwhelming joy at learning his birth mother is alive has quickly evolved into a complex web of family drama that threatens to tear the Falconeri-Spencer household apart. The moment that changed everything, Rocco's world shifted dramatically just a few weeks ago when he stumbled upon the truth that would reshape his understanding of his own identity. Through a series of revelations involving Brooklyn Quartermain's investigation files, Rocco discovered that Dr. Britt Westburn and Lulu Spencer had actually given birth to him. The teenage boy, who had already been grappling with abandonment issues stemming from Lulu's 4-year coma, found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about his family. When news broke that Britt was not only alive, but returning to Port Charles after Jason Morgan's daring rescue mission in Croatia, Rocco's emotional response was immediate and overwhelming. The young man, who had been curious about his birth mother ever since learning the truth, suddenly found himself with the opportunity he never thought he'd have a chance to meet the woman who brought him into this world. Britt's reluctant homecoming. For Dr. Britt Westburn, the return to Port Charles carries its own emotional weight. Having allowed her loved ones to believe she was dead for over 2 years, Britt faces the difficult task of explaining her prolonged absence and the circumstances that led to her presumed death. The reunion with her mother, Liesel Obrecht, promises to be particularly emotional, as Britt never informed Liesel that she had survived the poisoned hook attack by Heather Weber. But it's the inevitable encounter with Rocco that weighs most heavily on Britt's mind. The young man she gave birth to, carried for 9 months, and then was forced to give up now knows the truth about their connection. The awkwardness of the situation is palpable. How does one explain to a teenager the complex circumstances surrounding his birth and the years of separation that followed? The truth behind the separation. When Rocco finally confronts Britt about their shared history, the conversation that unfolds is both heartbreaking and revelatory. Britt, feeling the weight of years of separation and misunderstanding, decides that complete honesty is the only path forward. In emotional detail, she recounts the circumstances that led to Rocco's birth and the painful decision to give him up. "I want you to understand something very important," Britt tells Rocco during their pivotal conversation. "I didn't abandon you by choice. I fought to keep you. But circumstances beyond my control forced me to let you go." The revelation that follows rocks Rocco to his core. Britt explains how Lulu Spencer, desperate to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers, pressured her into giving up the child she had carried and delivered. The story unfolds with all the complexity that defines Port Charles' relationship stone embryos, medical deception, and the painful legal battles that ultimately separated a birth mother from her child. Rocco's growing resentment. As the truth sinks in, Rocco's emotional response is swift and intense. The teenager, already feeling neglected by Lulu's singular focus on finding Charlotte Casadini after awakening from her coma, now has concrete reasons to feel resentful toward the woman he's called mother his entire life. The knowledge that Lulu actively worked to separate him from Britt adds a new layer to his existing abandonment issues. "She made me believe you didn't want me," Rocco tells Britt, his voice thick with emotion. "All these years, I thought my birth mother had just thrown me away. But it wasn't true, was it?" Britt's confirmation that she had wanted to keep him, had fought for him, transforms Rocco's understanding of his origins entirely. The anger he feels toward Lulu is no longer just about feeling neglected in favor of Charlotte. It's about feeling deliberately deceived about one of the most fundamental aspects of his identity. A mother-son bond emerges. In the days following their emotional conversation, something beautiful begins to develop between Britt and Rocco. The connection they share, born from their shared biology, but nurtured by honest communication, starts to flourish in ways that surprise them both. For the first time, Rocco feels truly seen and understood by someone who shares his DNA. "You can call me Mom if you want to," Britt tells him during one of their heart-to-heart conversations, her voice trembling with emotion. "I know Lulu raised you, and I would never want to take away from that. But if you need another mother figure in your life, your birth mother, I'm here." The moment is transformative for both of them. Rocco, who has spent years feeling like an outsider in his own family, suddenly has someone who not only understands him, but actively chose to bring him into the world. For Britt, It's the fulfillment of a maternal bond she thought was lost forever. Their relationship begins to develop naturally, with Rocco seeking out Britt's company and advice. They share meals together, walk through the hospital corridors where Britt once worked, and slowly build the foundation of a relationship that should have begun 17 years earlier. For the first time in his life, Rocco feels like he has a parent who is completely focused on him, not distracted by other obligations or other children. Lulu's desperate reaction. As Lulu watches her son grow closer to Britt, her emotional state becomes increasingly unstable. The woman who fought so hard to get her child back from Britt years ago now faces the possibility of losing him again, this time emotionally rather than legally. The irony is not lost on anyone in Port Charles. Lulu's attempts to keep Rocco away from Britt are only driving him closer to his birth mother. "You can't see her anymore," Lulu tells Rocco after witnessing their growing closeness. "Britt Westburn is dangerous, and I won't have you getting involved with her." But Lulu's ultimatum has exactly the opposite effect she intended. Rocco, already resentful of what he sees as Lulu's controlling behavior, rebels against her demands with the full force of teenage defiance, combined with legitimate grievance. "At least Britt cares about me," he fires back during one of their heated arguments. "When you woke up from your coma, you immediately started obsessing over Charlotte. You pushed me aside like I didn't matter. Now you want to control who I can and can't see. That's not happening." The plan to drive Britt away. Watching her relationship with Rocco deteriorate while his bond with Britt strengthens, Lulu's desperation reaches dangerous levels. The rational part of her mind knows that Britt poses no real threat to Rocco's well-being, but the maternal instinct to maintain control over her child overrides all logical thinking. In the shadows of her grief and jealousy, Lulu begins formulating a plan that she believes will solve all her problems. If she can't convince Rocco to stay away from Britt, and if she can't reason with Britt to maintain distance from her son, then perhaps the solution lies in making Port Charles an unwelcome place for Dr. Westburn altogether. She shouldn't have come back, Lulu confides to herself, her mind racing with possibilities. If Britt had stayed dead, none of this would be happening. Maybe it's time to make sure she understands that her presence here isn't want to be anyone. The plan that begins to take shape in Lulu's mind is both desperate and dangerous. Drawing on her Spencer family connections and her knowledge of Port Charles politics, she starts identifying pressure points that could make Britt's life in town untenable. Professional sabotage, social ostracism, legal challenges will become potential weapons in Lulu's arsenal as she prepares to wage war against the woman who gave birth to her son. The battle lines are drawn. As the tension escalates, the lines of conflict become increasingly clear. On one side stands Britt, backed by her growing relationship with Rocco and supported by those in Port Charles, who believe in second chances and family reunification. Her mother Liesel, despite her initial shock at Britt's deception about surviving, ultimately supports her daughter's right to know her biological child. On the other side, Lulu represents the fears of every parent who has ever worried about losing their child's affection to someone else. Her actions, while extreme, stem from a place of genuine panic about losing the son she fought so hard to raise. Dante finds himself caught in the middle, trying to support his ex-wife while also acknowledging Rocco's right to know his birth mother. The conflict reaches beyond the immediate family, drawing in longtime Port Charles residents who remember the original custody battle years ago. Some side with Lulu, viewing Britt's return as a disruptive force that threatens family stability. Others support Britt's right to build a relationship with her biological son, especially given the circumstances that originally separated them. The coming storm. As Lulu's plans to drive Britt from Port Charles begin to take shape, the stage is set for a confrontation that could have lasting consequences for everyone involved. Rocco, caught between his growing love for his birth mother and his complicated feelings toward the woman who raised him, faces choices that will define his relationships for years to come. The tragedy of the situation lies not in malice, but in misunderstanding and fear. Lulu's desperation to maintain her bond with Rocco blinds her to the possibility that love is not a finite resource, that Rocco's affection for Britt doesn't necessarily diminish his feelings for her. Similarly, Britt's joy at reconnecting with her son sometimes overlooks the genuine love and sacrifice that Lulu has invested in raising Rocco for 17 years. The resolution of this family drama will test the limits of forgiveness, understanding, and the complex nature of modern family relationships. In Port Charles, where redemption and second chances are always possible, the question remains: Can three people who love the same young man find a way to coexist? Or will Lulu's desperate actions tear apart any possibility of a peaceful resolution? As the story continues to unfold, viewers can expect emotional confrontations, unexpected alliances, and the kind of dramatic revelations that make General Hospital must-see television. The return of Britt Westburn has set in motion events that will reshape multiple families and test the bonds that hold Port Charles together. In the end, Rocco's joy at discovering his birth mother is alive has opened a door that cannot be closed. The question now is whether the adults in his life can find a mature way to handle the complex emotions and relationships that door has revealed, or whether their inability to compromise will ultimately hurt the young man they all claim to love. The battle for Rocco's heart and soul has only just begun. Next, we will dive into the whirlwind return of Jacinda Bracken and how her unexpected reappearance is shaking up the lives of Michael Corinthos and the wounded Drew Kane in ways that could unravel family ties and hidden agendas. The drama in Port Charles has taken a shocking turn with Jacinda Bracken's sudden comeback, perfectly timed to coincide with the chaotic night when Drew Kane was gunned down. Imagine the scene. Michael Corinthos, nursing a drink at the upscale Port Charles Grill bar, strikes up a conversation with this mysterious and alluring woman, unaware that their encounter might soon become his worst nightmare. Jacinda, with her sharp wit and enigmatic smile, seemed like just another intriguing stranger, but her history in town suggests far more sinister undercurrents. As the evening unfolded, their chat flowed effortlessly, touching on everything from the stresses of daily life to fleeting dreams of escape, leaving Michael with a lingering sense of connection he couldn't quite shake. Little did he know, this meeting wasn't mere coincidence. It carried the weight of past betrayals and future complications that could dismantle his carefully constructed world. Recapping her turbulent exit, Jacinda had vanished from Port Charles after accepting a substantial hush money payment from Nina Reeves and Portia Robinson. This came right after her infamous act of spiking Drew's drink with ketamine during a wild night out, a move that sent shockwaves through their social circle. Fleeing to the sun-soaked shores of Australia, she aimed to start fresh, perhaps lounging on beaches in Sydney or exploring the rugged outback to leave her troubles behind. However, her name resurfaced when Curtis Ashford began a desperate search, hoping to lure her back with promises of more cash. His plan: to have Jacinda fabricate stories about Drew's supposed recreational drug habits, painting him as a reckless thrill-seeker whose choices were purely self-indulgent. Curtis, ever the strategist, discussed this openly with Portia, but their whispers were overheard by the keen-eared Kai Taylor, adding another layer of intrigue to the unfolding saga. Eager to protect his interests, Curtis was prepared to offer Jacinda a generous incentive, maybe even covering her travel expenses or setting her up with a new identity down under. Yet, fate intervened when Drew, always one step ahead, located her first and handed over a payoff to ensure she stayed gone for good, or so he thought. Clearly, whatever sum Drew provided wasn't enough to buy her permanent silence, as her return suggests deeper motivations, perhaps a thirst for revenge or an opportunity to exploit the chaos for personal gain. Now, Michael's current dilemma ties directly into Drew's cunning schemes, which seemed designed to manipulate the fragile dynamics surrounding Willow Tate and her children. Drew, driven by a mix of ambition and lingering affection, has been plotting relentlessly to facilitate the return of Willow's kids to her custody, viewing it as his ticket back into her heart. Willow, in a moment of vulnerability, hinted that such a victory could reignite their romance, fueling Drew's determination to pull every string available. Enter Jacinda. Could she be the key pawn in this elaborate game? Her abrupt appearance at the Port Charles Grill, engaging Michael in what felt like a scripted flirtation, raises suspicions of orchestration. Picture the dimly lit bar, jazz music playing softly in the background, as Jacinda feigned worry over her cocktail's cost, prompting Michael to gallantly step in and cover it. Their conversation quickly deepened, sharing laughs over shared frustrations with high society pressures, and even exchanging stories about travel mishaps, creating an undeniable chemistry that crackled like electricity. But was this spark genuine, or a carefully planted trap? Adding to the mystery, whispers around town suggest Drew might have secretly funded her return, instructing her to weave herself into Michael's orbit at precisely the right moment, perhaps to distract him or gather compromising intel that could sway the custody battles. In unexpected ways, the plot thickens with Michael's urgent need for a solid alibi on the night of Drew's shooting, a detail that could either save him or seal his downfall. Investigators noted Michael's car suspiciously parked near Drew's residence during the attack, a fact that Tracy Quartermain stumbled upon when she arrived to find Drew bleeding on the floor from 2 gunshot wounds. Tracy, with her no-nonsense demeanor and sharp instincts honed from years in the Quartermain empire, pulled Michael aside and issued a stern warning: secure an airtight alibi, and keep your mouth shut about that evening's whereabouts. The next morning, as Michael underwent routine blood work at ABC General Hospital, he skimmed through Lulu Spencer's latest expose, which detailed Drew's scandalous escapades involving body shots with none other than Jacinda. The realization hit him like a thunderbolt that was the same enigmatic woman who'd captivated him at the bar, now linked to Drew in ways that screamed foul play. This connection sparked a fire in Michael's mind, prompting him to piece together how Jacinda might hold the key to proving his innocence, or at least diverting suspicion. To flesh this out, he envisioned scenarios where their bar chat extended into a late-night walk along the waterfront, discussing everything from family legacies to personal regrets, unknowingly providing him with a timeline that could clear his name. Determined to track her down, Michael enlisted Curtis's help, unaware that Jacinda was already lurking in the shadows of Port Charles, perhaps hiding out in a discreet motel on the outskirts or blending into the crowd at local cafes. Curtis, privy to her return through his network of contacts, played it cool, knowing the stakes were sky high. The burning question swirl: did Michael and Jacinda slip away from the grill together, sharing a cab or strolling arm-in-arm under the streetlights? Were they entangled in a moment of passion precisely when the shots rang out at Drew's? If so, Jacinda could serve as Michael's golden ticket to evade Anna Devane's probing investigation into the shooting. Yet, this alibi comes with razor-sharp edges, admitting to spending time with a known escort could torpedo his standing in the upcoming custody hearings, portraying him as irresponsible and unfit. Imagine the courtroom drama, lawyers dissecting every detail of that night, with Jacinda's testimony potentially saving Michael from criminal charges, but costing him dearly in family court, where judges frown upon such associations. Meanwhile, Drew's meticulously laid plans may have derailed with his own injury, leaving fans wondering if he'll summon Jacinda to his hospital bedside for a clandestine chat, risking Willow's wrath if she discovers the depths of his manipulations. Speculation runs wild about the potential fallout, including the explosive possibility that Jacinda could end up carrying Michael's child if their encounter crossed into unprotected intimacy, drawing parallels to his past fling with Sasha Gilmore, which unexpectedly led to a pregnancy. Michael's fertility seems almost legendary, rivaling that of his adoptive father, Sonny Corinthos, despite no blood relation. Envision the scandal: Tracy Quartermain erupting in fury at the thought of a Quartermain heir, conceived with a woman of Jacinda's background, her tirades echoing through the mansion halls as she demands damage control. Carly Corinthos Spencer, Michael's fiercely protective mother, would spiral into a frenzy, torn between defending her son and grappling with the public humiliation. In the cutthroat arena of family court, this revelation would paint Michael as reckless, especially following another impulsive one-night stand resulting in parenthood, potentially swaying judges to rule against him and complicating Willow's efforts to regain her children. Adding to the suspicion, Michael's decision to get blood drawn mere hours after meeting Jacinda feels eerily timed, sparking theories that she might have slipped something into his drink on Drew's orders. Mirroring her previous stunt, Drew had once plotted with Portia to tamper with blood results, aiming to frame Michael as a substance abuser and undermine his credibility, though Portia pushed back fiercely, refusing to cross ethical lines and cutting off any further payments to Jacinda. Drew's resourcefulness suggests he might have recruited another ally to carry out the scheme. Then, in a twist of irony, Drew himself falls victim to the shooting, leaving his plot in limbo. Now, with Drew teetering on the edge of recovery, Jacinda might pivot to blackmailing Nina and Portia, convinced that her original benefactors owe her more. Since Drew's hospitalization halts any promised funds, she could show up at their doors, demanding exorbitant sums while threatening to expose their past dealings, forcing them into desperate alliances or confessions that could topple the fragile house of cards. In Port Charles, as this storyline unravels, the intersections of loyalty, deception, and redemption promise more heart-pounding twists. Will Michael's alliance with Jacinda prove his salvation or his undoing? Stay tuned to ABC General Hospital for the next chapter in this gripping saga, where every secret has a price and no one emerges unscathed.